أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I'm gonna try and show you how to clean Qur'an tilaawah, qiraa'ah with Audacity. Yeah, so if you check the description, you'll find a text file. It's a document that has all of the parameters you'll see me use in this video. It has further more in-depth instructions on using Audacity. It even has a little, very basic explanation of how to download Audacity and other pre-steps you might need. Yeah, it's quite in detail. It will be definitely be good for you to have that up at the end when you're trying to give this a go yourself, or if you're following along. I'm making two assumptions first. The first assumption is that you've already got Audacity downloaded, installed, and you can get to this page that I'm currently on, which is just by opening a new file. It's like a blank canvas. And the second assumption is that you've already managed to get your audio recording downloaded. So what's next? If you've got it downloaded, I assume you'll have it somewhere in your file base. Let's try and open it. You go to File, you go to Open, and you pick it. Pretty easy. I'm going to try and open an AAC file first. I'll show you why. This is why. Incorrect file type. So AAC files can't be opened without this optional FFmpeg library. I'd recommend not even bothering with that. Maybe if you have the time, go ahead, but I can just do this instead. Just open a simple Google tab and we'll just look for a simple website that converts AAC to WAV. Yeah, this is the one I use. Could use any. And we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to go find the AAC file. This one. I'm using a recording I have of Qaari Yameen. Convert to WAV. Now we just wait for this to convert. And then we download it. Super simple. Almost finished. One thing you'll notice about the WAV file, and I'll show you this in a second, is that the WAV file tends to, complicate the way that it's stored in the computer, meaning that it will take up a lot more storage and data. But you don't have to worry about it. You can delete that WAV file after we're done at the end. And at the end, we'll have an MP3 file, which is a lot smaller. Look at this, 434 megabytes for, I think it's about a half an hour audio. That is quite a bit. In AAC form, we'll see it in a second, but in AAC form, I don't believe it was more than maybe 50 megabytes. Okay, look, so we've downloaded this. So essentially, we uploaded it to this website, it converted it to a WAV format, and then we've downloaded that WAV format. That will be there in my downloads. I'll go back to the Audacity screen now and we'll try and open that one. And yep, there, you can see it's there. Here, in AAC format, it actually took 11 megabytes. But in WAV format, 445 megabytes. So yeah. But again, not to worry. Something you can delete by the end. Okay, now, the first thing I'd want... This is obviously the whole recording, yeah? The first thing I'd recommend doing is just trimming down anything you need to trim down. If there's anything you need to edit or get rid of, go ahead and do that. So for example, what I'll do is I'll go to this bit here where it seems like something ends. I'm using my arrow keys left and right to skip forward a bit like this. And I'm using space just to press play. Okay, let's stop there. I'm gonna click it just to get that point stopped. Right click on that line that I've saved there and split the clip. And then I'm just gonna select this clip, the rest of this, delete, done. Yeah. just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to delete from here as well. That is just so I can get the audio shorter and I can show you what to do, you know, when you end up with a split clip that starts later. Look, we've got this starting later now. We need to move it to the beginning, of course. You know, we don't want 15 seconds of blank space. Just click it once here and then click and drag it over. That's a single click and then hold the second click, drag it over. Nice and easy. Now if I press space again, you can see it starts from there. Yeah? Okay, so that's the first thing. We've trimmed it down. Now what we want to do is some noise reduction. So, you see these low points? That's where not a lot of sound is being played. Yeah? You can see if I zoom in, really zoom in here, there's just tiny specks and there's this little flat almost line. This is a very good recording, hence it's quite flat already. Noise reduction wouldn't even really be necessary here, but let's see this for example. What does this sound like? Okay, that's the sound of bottles and a bit of commotion in there. Yep, same thing. Same sort of thing. So these are bad examples, but you hear the little ambient noise in the back. Not the speaking, but everything else. You can hear it well here. That. In usual audio, you'll get that throughout the whole audio. And that's mainly just because obviously you've got a fan running in the background, a window open, something like that. You might even currently be able to hear my laptop fan whirring. Yeah. But yeah, we want to look for the purest sample of that sound. Let's just go for this one. I think this might be the best we get. Probably not. Okay, maybe I should have picked a different audio. But yeah, let's say this sounded the most perfect. It sounded like only the ambient noise. There wasn't much coughing. There wasn't much bottle rattling. There was nothing else. It was just pure background noise. I would highlight it. How did I highlight it? I simply clicked once and then held the second click and then dragged across. Yeah. So now I've highlighted that sample noise. We want to go to Effect, Noise Removal and Repair, Noise Reduction, Get Noise Profile. So that just means that we're telling Audacity that that's the sound that we want to reduce from the overall file, right? Get Noise Profile. Done. Now what I want to do is Control A or Command A. That's going to highlight everything. And this is us highlighting how much we want Audacity to reduce of that noise. So what you could do is if the fans in the back are, you know, being turned on or off, for example, and you want to be very meticulous about it, what you could instead do is, you know, when the fan's on, then noise reduce that bit for the fan being on. When the fan's on maybe a lower setting, noise reduce that bit for what it sounds like when the fan's on a low setting. That sort of thing, yeah? Also, I'm zooming in and out of the audio here with the pinch. Just super simple. Okay, now I'm gonna Control A or Command A to highlight everything. I'm gonna go back to that same noise reduction tab. And I'm gonna enter some parameters here. These are the recommended ones I have, or whatever's in the document. Let's just click OK. What you should see, although it might not be very visible because our noise sample wasn't the best, but what you should see is that these lines start to flatten out, and you see this bass line here coming through. It's like a line. It's almost like, you know, chicken on a skewer. And that skewer is the background noise. Yeah? That bass line throughout the whole sound. And that's what we're getting rid of here. You can see it also reduces the overall volume. Yeah? Now this should sound better. You can see these areas, I believe this area wasn't this flat. Look how flat it is, nice and flat. That means we've almost completely removed the background noise from that. Also, when you highlight a section, just like I've highlighted now, and you press space to press play, it plays you only that section, so that's useful. Listen to that. Look how little background noise there is. There you go. This is a good example of what I want next one to show you. Even though all of this sounds like nothing, completely perfect. What do you hear here? That is a cough, or that is someone sniffing their nose, or that is what we call a sudden sound. It's abrupt, right? It's not expected to be filtered out. Why? Because the audio doesn't see that as background noise, ambient noise. It sees it as foreground noise, as almost a main part of the video. If you wanted to get rid of something like that, to be extra meticulous, you could just highlight it like this and press delete. And you can see I've just gotten rid of that spec. But obviously, I'm going to control Z to undo that. Obviously, that wouldn't work, if you're in the middle of qur'an tilaawah and that happens, then how would you delete that coughing noise? I'm sure there is another setting, but I'm not going to be going through it today. Next, amplify. So we've lost a bit of volume. Let's say this wasn't loud enough for me. Yeah. What would I do next? Well, I'm going to press Control A, Command A to highlight everything. Control A or Command A, and then go to Amplify, Volume and Compression, then Amplify here. Amplify just will make it louder. It could also make it quieter. Yeah. When this number is negative here, it just means it will be quieter. And again, these are the settings I'm choosing to use. Yeah. Let's make it 9 decibels louder and apply. Do you see how the lines have gotten bigger? 9 decibels is way too much. You shouldn't really have an audio file looking like this. This means the peaks are really high. You don't want it to sound like that. Generally, this is how you want it looking. So generally, this is all right. I've Control Z'd that amplify change, but look at the difference. It obviously makes it louder, right? Let's say I wanted to make it louder, but I obviously made it too loud. Then I would just go back to the amplifier and I would just take that parameter and make it a bit smaller, but keep it positive so it's actually increasing the volume and not decreasing. Yeah. Sorry about that. I dropped the mic. Reverb next, yeah. Reverb. Okay, so Control A, highlight everything, or Command A. We go to Effect. We go to Delay and Reverb. We click on Reverb. These are the parameters I like to use. You can play around with some of them. I believe room size is one of them. Sometimes I use 45. Sometimes I use 40. Reverberance, I let you play around, but mainly you want to play around only with room size, reverberance, and damping. Yeah. Have wet only unselected and click apply. And that should make a very tiny difference. You won't see much. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, so very tiny difference. You can notice it in this section here is what I saw, yeah? Look at this section. I'm going to Control Z the change and Control Y to show you, yeah? So that's undoing from Control Z or Command Z, and Control Y will redo it with or Command Y. Do you see the very tiny difference? The subtle differences in, like, I think it was around here. You see? It doesn't do much at all. I think you could even skip this step with how little it's doing here. Maybe you want to amplify that step and play around with those parameters and get more reverb. Again, it's up to you. You might as well try these things out, right? So now we've got reverb on it too. Next, we want to do echo. Bear in mind that echo is going to amplify your reverb. So those little changes are now going to become bigger changes when I apply the echo. Yeah, so don't go too crazy on the reverb because then your echo will just never sound alright. Okay. If you do go crazy on the reverb, I think the best approach would then to not apply any echo. Okay, anyway, when we apply echo, we're following the same process. Control A or Command A to highlight everything. We go to Effect, Delay and Reverb, Echo. This echo is an artificial echo, meaning this echo just replays the sound of the last, second or so, and it replays it infinitely. and it delays it. The first replay is delayed by 0.15 seconds. Yeah. And then every time it replays it infinitely after that, it has this multiplier of 0.25, which means it's getting a quarter quieter every time. And you can imagine when you do a quarter times a quarter times a quarter, you're going to end up, if you do that infinitely, you're going to end up at 0. So essentially the sound fades out. So this decay factor controls how quickly that sound will go quieter, and the delay time controls, how far between the original sound and the artificial echo starting there is. For Qur'an tilawah and qiraa'ah, this will heavily depend on how quickly we're reciting. Tarawih recitation, if this delay time's too long, then it's gonna jumble your words. It's gonna be hard to clearly hear what's actually being recited. And obviously this is kalamullah. We shouldn't sacrifice clarity beyond a certain level for beauty, right? Yeah. Whereas if I'm reading slower, then this delay time can be a bit higher. Decay factor, similar sort of principle, right? Where decay factor, you want it to be a lower number when the recitation is quicker. Why? Because you want it to dissipate quickly. You want it to fade away quickly. Because if you're on the next ayah and you're still playing the sound from the previous ayah, obviously, you get what I mean? And then, yeah, we just click apply. And you'll see what happens now to this. It did something, right? Let's actually play around and show you how it sounds when you make it wrong. When you do too much echo, yeah? So let's try this. I'm going to go 0.25 and decay factor of 0.35. Yeah? Let's have a look at what happens to the graph. It looks the same, right? So you can't visually tell a difference. However, when we listen to it, what do we hear? Okay, that was a slow bit of the recitation. That's why it didn't sound too bad. What about when we actually get to the non-mud areas? Okay, that last bit again it got slow. So كل آمن بالله والرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون. Do you hear that ilayhi just completely disappeared? And I don't know if it's just my ears because I'm used to hearing Qaari Yameen. Shout out to him. Beautiful recitations. Allahumma barik. I don't know if it's because I'm used to listening to him, but it doesn't sound that bad to me. However, I think the average listener would listen to this and be confused about what Quran is actually being read. This is a good example. Listen to this. It sounds very mumbled, and it sounds like certain sounds are overlapping other sounds. You can hear that the echo is about 2-3 words behind. Yeah, this is too much echo now, because at that point where the recitation is fast, it's become too much. So that's something else you need to bear in mind. The fastest bit of your recitation is probably what you want to base everything on, because the slower bits will always sound alright, but the faster bits will sound wrong. Okay, now we've got the echo sorted. Next is just, we're finished at this point. Everything sounds good. Let's Control Z that change. Let me just apply a normal echo. Let's go for 0.2, 0.25. Let's just see what that sounds like. And again, so what I should have done there is when I had muhkamatun hunna umul kitab, that bit of the ayah, I should have actually taken this time down here, what it said. It would have given me the time of the recording, and I should have noted that, so that, next time I'm testing this next new type of echo, I Control Z did that change, I applied a different echo. I can pick that specific bit that was being read again. and I can listen to it again because I knew that was a fast bit. That was a good bit to test on almost.
ربنا إنك جامع إلا الله وما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله.
That bit was quick. So this will be a good time to note down. 8:45 in this recording specifically will be a good test for how far I can take the echo without mumbling stuff.
متشابهات فأما الذين
Wait, this is actually just the bit after, I think. I think if I go back about 15 seconds, we'll get to the same bit.
العزيز الحكيم هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم.
Yeah, it is as well. Subhanallah. Okay, so yeah, I'm happy with how it sounds. I don't think that sounded too mumbled. Again, be careful with your own bias, because if you're listening to your own voice or you're listening to someone you've heard a lot, say you're editing for someone else, then you're going to find that you hear things more clearly than the average person would hear it. So that sounded alright to me. Maybe it doesn't sound alright to you guys. Allahu A'lam. Okay, so next, we're finished now. Just need to export it, right? So we're gonna click on export audio. Save the file name whatever you want. It could be the same name as well, bear in mind, because the file extension will be different. That's how you'll figure this out. Your final product is always going to be a .mp3 as long as you pick format mp3 files. You could format it as something else, but mp3 is probably the best. It's going to save you a lot of space, and it's very, compatible. It's very universally used. I do recommend clicking browse and picking a specific folder. I have one clearly in my documents, and then I've got a personal folder, and then I've got my Audacity folder where all of my recordings that I've saved here go. Stereo, pick the same parameters for these, and then you click export. Let's do this. I'm gonna save it as tutorial, yeah, just so I can find it. Export. Might have to wait a few seconds. This was a long recording still, I think. But yeah, the longest I've ever seen this take is 1 minute or 2 minutes. So yeah. Now, before you close anything, the best thing to do is open up your file explorer. Open up your file explorer, go to your files, and just very easily check it's there. Yeah. So you can see I've got it there, right? Tutorial.mp3. Maybe double check the length. Yeah, length 15 minutes, 14 minutes it says. Size 23 megabytes. Notice we went back down the wave file. Remember it being like 436, and then because I split the time in half, it still would have been about 200 megabytes. We went down to 22 megabytes because of the way MP3 files are stored. They're better compressed. So yeah, it's there. I feel confident it's there. I'm just gonna close the project now. Save the project before closing. You can if you want to, but it's going to build up and it takes a lot of data. I'm not sure how much data it will take, how much storage it will take, but I can imagine it building up, and I don't think it's worth saving these before closing, especially when you're following the same process every time. Don't be so, scared if you lose the parameter that worked for you last time and it's tiny bit different, because you might hear that tiny difference, but the average listener won't be able to hear the tiny difference between, for example, using a 0.25 decay factor in the echo versus using a 0.3 decay factor in the echo. Save project before closing, therefore. I tell you not to. And that's it. You click no, and then you're done. Please keep me in your du'as. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.